your radio, on Global Player, and
head east on Buckingham Avenue towards Dundee Road.
This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, the Prime Minister is facing fresh questions over whether COVID rules were broken in Downing Street. A photo obtained by The Guardian shows Boris Johnson, his wife, and 17 staff members in the number 10 garden during the first national lockdown last May. At the time, outdoor gatherings...
In 100 yards, turn right onto Dover Road. Turn right onto Dover Road.
Anderson says it doesn't look like that.
Sitting around in a garden with wine and cheese and groups of people gathering is not what the rest of the country were allowed to do in May last year. Lots of people have been in contact with me saying at that time last year and at the time of the other parties that are alleged, they were not allowed to see their dying loved ones in hospital. They were not allowed to meet up with family and friends. It's been so difficult.
Rishi Sunak says he's doubling the extra COVID funding for Scotland.
Continue for 1.5 miles.
The Chancellor's announced the sum will rise to £860 million following demands from the three nations. Former teachers are being asked to be on hand to return to England's classrooms next year to manage any staff absences brought about by COVID. Ministers want them to help plug gaps caused by the spread of the Omicron variant. Education Secretary Nadim Zahawi has made an appeal to those who've left the profession.
Whether you're recently retired or trained as a teacher and have moved profession, I urge you to consider whether you might be able to spare even a day a week to bolster the numbers of supply staff available around the country.
A man and a teenage boy have been charged with murder following a stabbing in southwest London. Farhad Khalili, who was 32, died after the attack in Kingston on Wednesday last week. The 15 and 27-year-olds are due to appear in court later. The Il Divo singer Carlos Marin has died at the age of 53. The Spanish baritone's bandmates have paid tribute, saying there'll never be another voice or spirit like Carlos. It's understood he was recently admitted to an intensive care unit. In the city, the FTSE 100 will reopen at 72.69 after closing up 9 points on Friday. The pound buys $1.32 and €1.17. And the weather cloudy for many, but some brighter spells possible later. Breezy in the far southwest and staying mostly dry, a high of 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom, I'm Simon Conway.
Are you staring at an empty fridge right now? Uber Eats. A dozen eggs and smoked Scottish salmon from Sainsbury's. Ripe and ready avocados. Extra special Madagascar dark chocolate from Asda. Frozen pepperoni pizza and frozen curly fries from Iceland. Order now. Uber Eats. Bring it. Check app for restrictions and availability. Separate orders are required from each store.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Good morning. 3 minutes after 7 on Monday, the 20th December. The spectre of Christmas past. Could restrictions now be ushered in this side of Christmas, or a circuit breaker just after and into the new year? Prime Minister and supposedly senior cabinet ministers, well, whoever's left, are meant to be looking at it, presumably in the back garden with cheese and wine. We'll give you the full details on that story. Also, take a look around the rest of Europe as well. In other news,
I'm meteorologist Claire Nazir, and I'll be joining Nick to bring you up to date with the latest forecast as we head towards Christmas Day.
back to vaccinations, or rather anti-vaccinations. A disturbing story that many people, anti-vaxxers, book those appointments to block the appointments and then not turn up. Can you think of anything more selfish? We'll look at that. Plus, Piers Corbyn at an anti-vaxxing rally on the weekend, hours before he was, quite rightly, nicked.
You've got to get a list of them. You can get lists of them on websites. And if your MP's one of them, go to their offices and, well, I would recommend burning them down.
What an oath. An appreciation of Richard Rogers, the architect, the man who shaped modern Britain. And it would appear no appreciation of... Rowling, I don't know. J.K. Rowling, proudly the only man in the world probably never to have seen a Harry Potter film. But now she's in yet more trouble as they're going to change the name of Quidditch because her views on the great transgender row, or is that row?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Text
transgender row. She's got to be Rowling. I've just been told she's Rowling. It's got to be JK. You can't have JK Row in a transgender row, can you? So it's right, she's now become Rowling, I've decided. Okay, that's later in the show. Gloomy headlines and the sense over the weekend with Sajid Javid appearing.
In 300 yards, keep right to continue towards Tons Lane, A355.
And also the timing very unfortunate for the Prime Minister. A photograph been released front page of the Guardian newspaper today of him with his wife and various others seeming to be enjoying some cheese and wine last year when restrictions are in. We were told it was a business meeting. We'll look at that as well. But let's look at the Telegraph front page.
Keep right.
Mixing at Christmas is part of the front page headline. Here are the details. LBC's political editor, Theo Ashford. Theo.
We already have Plan B, COVID passports, face masks and working from home. The question is, will we have Plan C, possibly even before Christmas? And this could include a ban on households mixing and non-essential shops closing. Health Secretary Sajid Javid was ruling nothing out yesterday.
It's a very sobering analysis. We take it very seriously. As I said, there are...
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London, Heathrow Airport.
Other factors, and then decide whether further action is needed or not. You know, if you wait until data is absolutely perfect, it may well be too late. So there are no guarantees in this pandemic. I don't think at this point we just have to keep everything under review.
The warning from the scientists is grim that from next month daily infections could hit 2 million, leading to up to 10,000 people being admitted to hospital every day. In the worst case scenario, that could lead to up to 6,000 people a day losing their lives from Omicron. From now, Mr. Javid is warning to be extra cautious this Christmas, especially when meeting elderly relatives.
If I'm going to see my mum, for example, who's elderly, like most very old people, she's more vulnerable than younger people, you know, I will take a test. And you know, I might, just have not the usual amount of hugs I get from my mum. You just take a bit of caution. And I think that's a sensible response.
Now, because of the promises made by the Prime Minister last week, any further restrictions would need to be approved by MPs first. That would mean Parliament would need to be recalled. Extra measures would get through, though, because of Labour support. However,
in a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
And there's discontent in the Cabinet. Chancellor Rishi Sunak is believed to want further restrictions delayed until data becomes clear. And there's also disagreement among some of the scientists too. Professor Robert Dingwall, who sits on SAGE, that's the group of scientists which advises the government, has questioned whether new restrictions would be effective.
The sort of interventions that are being advocated have a very fragile evidence base. Probably the only thing that makes much impact is working from home. The rest of the social distancing, the masks. We're 2 years into the pandemic and we really have no robust evidence that any of this stuff makes any difference.
Now, on the plus side, the booster vaccine program is starting to hit top speed, but still not enough to ensure that every adult is triple jabbed by the end of this month. More than 900,000 vaccinated on Saturday, but that figure excludes Wales, so it's probably over 1 million. Meanwhile, Lord Karen Billy-Moria, president of the CBI, told LBC the government should be focusing on vaccines and testing rather than further restrictions.
What we got now with the new variant is this further uncertainty. There's no question about it. The cases are rising very, very quickly. So we've just released this new document, Living with the Variants. What we say, if we follow 6 steps, then we should be able to deal with this on an ongoing basis without having a stop-start and locking down the economy. So, for example, having mass testing rather than mass isolation, having the businesses have taken huge measures at great expense of time to make their premises COVID secure, to use the vaccine program, the boosters, to encourage people to have those boosters.
Lord Billy-Moria speaking on LBC yesterday and concluding Theo Ashwood's report. Well, we'll speak to an expert on the health matter in just a moment. First, let's go to journalist Fraser Nelson, who's editor of The Spectator, columnist for the Daily Telegraph, and has a fascinating piece in today's edition of the Daily Telegraph, in which Fraser has had a Twitter conversation or exchange, whatever word one uses, with one of the key modelers, chairman of the SAGE Modelling Committee, Professor Graham Medley. Fraser Nelson joins us now. Fraser, briefly, can you take my listeners through the exchange and what you learned from it? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I was delighted to see you pop up on Twitter, because you don't often get the chance to interview the chairman of the SAGE Modelling Committee. Now, a lot of our lives are in the hands of these SAGE modelers, because they all come out with figures saying what lies around the corner, and if it's grim, the government will say, look at what the experts are saying, we need to lock down because SAGE are pointing there was going to be all these terrible number of hospitalizations, etc. Now, what I wanted to know was why he left out some of the more optimistic scenarios. Like his organisation, the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, had just come out with some various scenarios. They had an optimistic one, a pessimistic one, but all of them assumed saying is way less deadly. And it was the bank, JP Morgan, that pointed this out. They were saying, let's look at this modelling. If you imagine it's less deadly, and the South Africans are doing, in fact, there is no crisis. The number of hospitalizations doesn't even get to be a third of what it was at the peak, and there's no need for any restrictions. So I said to him on Twitter, why didn't you include this scenario? It's quite plausible, but it's less dangerous. And so why didn't you imagine that it wasn't to show what those figures would do? And his reply was very cryptic. He was saying, well, we only ask what we're told to, we only model what we're told to model. This is his first point. As if somebody was sort of giving him orders as to whether he think basically we don't want to be mild scenarios. And secondly, he was saying, if I model a scenario that shows that no extra restrictions are needed, it's not useful to the policymakers. The only thing that's useful to them is a scenario where they have to take action, i.e. lock down. Now, so I asked him, what are you saying you only model scenarios that would involve lockdown restrictions and that you deliberately exclude just as likely scenarios that don't require any extra restrictions? And he, again, cryptically replied, we only model what we're asked to model. Now, to me, this raises a very interesting question that SAGE, rather than giving us a range of outcomes, is only actually giving us outcomes which would require politicians to take action, and we're not being told that there are just as likely scenarios that mean it's actually all going to be okay, and it might start to go down as it's already started to do, it looks like, in South Africa.
Why? Why are they behaving? Why are the government behaving in this fashion, would you say, Fraser?
Well, of course, this is where it gets very difficult. I mean, you're right to say the government, Nick, because effectively it is the government. I mean, we get SAGE, they've come up with a very...
In 2 miles, at junction 4B, exit towards M3, M23.
This is just a random academic, not random, he's chosen to be the SAGE modelling committee. He's not answerable. We're not quite sure who pulls the strings. We're not quite sure how this rather shadowy SAGE operation works, and we're not quite sure who's accountable here. Now, I didn't know this, but not only that, after my Twitter exchange, I had 2 or 3 government ministers call me up saying, we had no idea that this was going on. And even the government ministers don't know who is being asked to do this and why, or how these strings are pulled. It's a very, very shadowy, and quite a few politicians are seriously worried about the way it's wired.
Read all about it in the Telegraph. Fraser Nelson's got his column in there. Thanks, Fraser. You're also editor of the Spectator as well. 12 after 7. Let's get to the health aspect of this. Oksana Pizik is global health expert and lecturer for University College London's Global Citizenship Programme and has helped us regularly, sadly, probably all too many times down this near 2-year fight against COVID. Joins me now. Do we need to delay the curve? Should they come in straight away? Are they needed at all? Your view. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Well, the one thing we do know is that the health impact is exponentially worse the longer that exponential growth continues. So acting early is something that we have learned over and over has made a huge difference. We do know that also it will have an impact on the NHS itself. And in the best case scenario, we're looking at numbers like 32,000 staff could be off sick by Christmas Day, which is
that the greater peril then? More NHS staffing than patient numbers, or are they both the same level?
Well, in terms of any type of healthcare people receive, if in the worst case scenario is 1 in 10, 130,000 people will be off.
In a quarter of a mile, at junction 4B, exit towards M3, M23.
The essential services start to be affected in a healthcare setting. So all of these things also need to be taken into consideration because the NHS is the core of delivery for COVID and beyond. It's not just all about COVID.
So what should the government be doing now, would you say?
Exit at junction 4B, then keep right at the fork.
The circuit breaker will likely be implemented, whether it's sooner or later, I think will probably be a political decision based on popularity. But I think we have evidence last time about the longer that we waited, the more damage that was done to the economy as well.
Keep right at the fork.
And let's get out of it faster this time.
Lastly, there does seem to be this rumbling sense that, I'm not minimising it for a moment, but this strain does not seem to...
Continue on M25 south for 1.5 miles.
Well, that's not what we've seen with all the other variants, right? So we didn't have it with Alpha and Delta. It wasn't less severe. This rumbling has been based on what's happening in South Africa, but Professor Chris Whitty very clearly said do not overinterpret that data because of two reasons. One, very young population. Two, due to they had a much higher exposure to Delta, which was the result here we had better vaccine coverage. So they have had worse outcomes over a longer period of time. So that has changed what they are coping with now. We should be looking at populations that more closely mirror our aging population and those demographics.
Grateful for your time. Thank you, Oksana Pizik, your global health expert lecturer for University College London's Global Citizenship Programme. Are you ready? What would your reaction be if we learn later today that the Prime Minister is going to make an address from number 10 Downing Street at 4 o'clock this afternoon or 5 o'clock this afternoon? You'll know what that's for, by the way. That's not to have a cheese and wine party. That will be to tell you that regrettably we're going to have to impose restrictions. That's what it would be. I'm telling you that for nothing. How will you react? Or is there a sense, as a couple of journalists are writing in a couple of different newspapers,
in a quarter of a mile, at junction 14, use the left 2 lanes to take the A3113 exit to Heathrow Airport.
Go man, Lord David Frost, key negotiator for Brexit, one of Boris Johnson's key allies. He's quit the cabinet in part over his concern over these additional restrictions.
Use the left 2 lanes to exit at junction 14, then keep right.
The government, because David Frost was hugely instrumental in delivering an orderly exit from the EU, and I think
keep right.
Confidence in him.
More on that after this 7:16 LBC News headlines. Simon Conway.
A photo has emerged showing the Prime Minister, his wife and 17 staff
continue for half a mile.
Garden during the first lockdown when restrictions on gatherings were in place. Rishi Sunak says he's doubling the extra COVID funding for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. A man and a 15-year-old boy have been charged with murder following a stabbing in southwest London. LBC weather, cloudy for many, staying mostly dry. A high
in a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto Airport Way, A3113.
Junction 4 at Leybourne. It's because a car has broken down and there are queues on the approach. Very busy on the North Circular Road southbound to North Ealing. That's all down to the roadworks. Queues continue on the A23 Brighton Road in both directions to Hooley. And that was after an accident. All the lanes are open now, but it's still very slow. No Woolwich Ferry running again this morning for those emergency repair works. I do expect delays going northbound to the Blackwall Tunnel. On the Underground, still severe delays on the Circle Line and minor delays on the Hammersmith and City. And Temple and Chancery Lane stations remain closed because of a shortage of staff.
LBC.
Christmas is here and so are Tesco Mobile's festive deals. And this year they're powered by Club Card prices. Get this incredible SIM with an impressive 30 gigs of data for only £13 a month. So you can enjoy the holidays with more than enough data. This is Supermarket Mobile. Pop in or search Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 20th of December. Was £15. Club Card 12-month contract and unlocked 4G enabled phone required. Phase policy applies. Charges and terms at tescomobile.com/terms.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC.
It was just another day in another week for Jenny. But as she listened to the radio, she was suddenly filled...
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the second exit onto Southern Perimeter Road.
Atlantic Way. She met the friendly locals of Cork's famous English market, indulged in the delicious fresh seafood of Galway, and explored the dramatic coastlines and picturesque landscapes of Donegal. Press the green button and fly to Ireland's wild Atlantic Way this winter. Just over an hour from London's Stansted Airport.
This is flute beatboxing. Amazing. You can do something just as amazing by giving blood. We need donors in London. It's quick and easy, and extra safety measures are in place. Join us at blood.co.uk to make an appointment at Westfield, Shepherd's Bush and Stratford or the West End Donor Centre. Your donation could help save the lives of up to 3 people. This is amazing.
I'm so forgetful nowadays.
Mum struggles to follow a conversation. My husband's memory worries me.
Concerned about memory issues?
Exit the roundabout onto Southern Perimeter Road.
This is the key to ensuring the best treatment, and there's a lot you can do. So talk to us at Recognition.
In 300 yards, at Western Perimeter Road roundabout, take the second exit and stay on Southern Perimeter Road.
For the very latest new treatments. Recognition Resignation Health. Head to brainandmindexperts.com.
I've cut my hand and it won't stop bleeding.
My son's just bumped his head. I've run out of my medication. I fell over and I think I've twisted my knee.
Exit the roundabout onto Southern Perimeter Road.
How can I help?
Continue on Southern Perimeter Road for 1.5 miles.
NHS 111 call handlers help people get the urgent care they need. If you want a job to be proud of, answer the call. Search NHS 111 jobs today. We are the NHS.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060973.
20 minutes after 7, come to your calls. You ready? If the Prime Minister would call a press conference later today, this afternoon, or possibly, no, it wouldn't be anybody else, it would have to be him. And say we're going back to Christmas of how it was last year, what would your reaction be? And it is very difficult. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do with my children, and it's damn tough, because you don't know whether you're allowing for 8 people you're going to have at Christmas, 10 people you're going to have at Christmas, or whether you're down to 3, whatever it might be. Your stories. Joe, you're the first caller. Front pages of the newspapers. Well, we mentioned the Daily Telegraph. The PM looks at plea to limit mixing at Christmas, which is very much what we've been talking about. Same theme for the Daily Mail. Don't ruin our Christmas again, Boris. Interesting enough, virtually every newspaper has what's called a wraparound, all urging you to get your booster. In fact, I think everyone but the Guardian has it. Maybe that's because they've got a front page picture of yet another gathering. This is Boris Johnson and Carrie and their baby. This is the young son, by the way. Of course, this was in May 2020, not the daughter that's arrived, not Romy. And it would seem about 11 other people wanted to, 11 others it would seem roughly. Apparently this is a working meeting. Johnson and staff seen at number 10 event in lockdown. That's the front page of the Guardian. We'll put that to the Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab, who's going to be with us later in the hour. Other front pages, well, the theme of restrictions is there. For the Times, Sunak resists new COVID restrictions before Christmas. The Daily Mirror decides it's D-Day for Christmas. Tougher restrictions could be imposed in England this week as COVID infections soar. If they're going to say it, they're going to have to say it fairly shortly, I would say. Jingle Bell Lock is the front page of The Sun. They also talk about possible curbs on pubs and mixing. No guarantees of escape from tougher Christmas rules is the front page of the Daily Express. Christmas restrictions hang in the balance is the Eye, and it's all beginning to look a bit ominous, as in Omicron. Ominous is the front page of the Metro. Joe in Lewis. Joe, what are your plans? Are you able to plan Christmas? Because it's damn tough at the moment, whether I'm going to welcome my children or not. Good morning.
Well, it's very difficult for us at the moment, Nick, because our eldest son is isolating because he's tested positive. I mean, he's
How old is the lad?
He's 20.
Right.
He's asymptomatic. He has no problems.
Right, okay.
He sort of lives in a flat over the garage. We're taking lateral flows every day, and
Right.
they're coming up as negative. But you know, if one of us tests positive between now and Christmas, that's Christmas. And
In 1/4 mile, at the roundabout, take the 3rd exit onto Beacon Road.
Well, we'll just have to have Christmas at home, won't we, really? I mean, you have to be pragmatic. We're all vaccinated. Both 2 of our boys have had their double jabs. My wife and I have had our boosters, so relatively confident on that front.
Can I ask you, is your view that the government should be doing more, they should be doing less, or you have a degree of sympathy for them because we are dealing with something that seems to, it's like wrestling with vapours. This seems to start a new strain wherever it chooses.
My thoughts are that the biggest problem is safe. I think the government...
Exit the roundabout onto Beacon Road. In 100 yards, at the roundabout, take the 2nd exit onto Stanwell Road.
Subcommittees,
for these subcommittees. I think they're all academics. I think you have to kind of query the politics of academics.
Exit the roundabout onto Stanwell Road. Continue on Stanwell Road for 1/2 mile.
Very nice for them. Everybody working for the government, sort of committees advising everybody what to do.
And salaries untouched.
You know, people being encouraged to denounce their neighbours, applauding government institutions on a Thursday night. It was a little bit Soviet bloc.
I think it was. Very accurate summary. Joe, I wish your boy well. I hope you can get him out the garage and around the table for Christmas. Be well, thank you. Ryan in Leicester. Ryan, are you ready to lock down more? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. I think so, yeah. I mean, you know, we're kind of nearly 2 years into this now, and I think that, you know, we're not really learning quick enough with new variants and how quickly they get out of control.
What do you do for a living, sir?
Well, I'm actually a driver, so I would still be working. We deliver cars all around the country,
Right.
so,
Lots
you know...
of people would not work. Lots of people might even lose their businesses, Brian.
Yeah, I understand that, and I obviously do think that some kind of aid needs to be put in place, maybe not to the extent that it was at the beginning of lockdown, because obviously being 28, if I'm going to be paying this back for the rest of my life by the looks of it. But, you know, I just think that with the way things are going...
In 300 yards, turn right onto Hatton Road.
Countries are quick to kind of restrict. I know that we have one of the greatest kind of achievements with the vaccines and the boosters. I mean, you know, I'm triple jabbed now, but, you know, it's just getting a bit crazy. And the concern is that, you know, there's going to be people out...
Turn right onto Hatton Road, then turn left onto Staines Road.
Then there's not going to be the people there to care for everything.
It is a worry we heard managing the NHS, because obviously the staff get sick themselves. Ryan, thank you for that. You're ready for more. I would question that, but let's see what others make of it. We turn to other stories of Lurch related to this, because David Frost, Lord Frost, became Frosty the Go man at the weekend when he decided, up with this I will not put, and quit the cabinet. It is reported in part because he was concerned about additional restrictions. Let's get the background to that.
Turn left onto Staines Road, A315.
Has quite a business card now with the job she has. From David Wooding, political editor for The Sun on Sunday. Let's start with Farewell Frosty. Morning, David.
Yes, a big blow for the Prime Minister. It seems, you know, it limped to the weekend after a torrid week. And then come Saturday night, his Brexit minister, one of his most loyal ministers, quits right in the middle of those important talks in about Northern Ireland, but also with a swipe at the government.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, continue straight to stay on Staines Road, A315.
In the crisis.
How close were the two, Dave?
Extremely close. They saw eye to eye on Brexit. He was one of the most loyal lieutenants he had in the cabinet, and the main devastating statement, part of his statement was about the tax burden. He says he doesn't like the tax, that we've had the highest tax burden in 70 years, spending up 3.8% every year, 150 billion extra spending in departments, the zero emissions business, but the biggest one was back to the issue you've been discussing earlier in the programme, is Plan B and vaccine passports. He's dead against what's going on with COVID, and that's where the problem lies for Boris in the days ahead, Nick, because does he go ahead with tighter restrictions or back down on that to keep in line with the...
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, continue straight to stay on Staines Road, A315.
Party in Parliament believe?
Liz Truss, she's the new takes this. How many jobs does she have now?
Well, she's the Foreign Secretary, of course, but what they've done is envelope the Brexit department into her role. The problem for Liz Truss is the Foreign Secretary's job is one of the 3 or 4 great offices of state, and there's a lot of work to do there, a lot of foreign travel indeed. And the other thing people are pointing out is that Liz Truss was, can we say the word, a Remainer, but she's been converted to Brexit since. She did actually vote and campaign for Remain.
David, thank you. So that's Women's Minister, Equalities Minister, Foreign Secretary, now in charge of this. It's non-stop. David Wooding, political editor of The Sun on Sunday. Thank you. The rise and rise of Liz Truss. Is she headed for the big job? Who knows? 7:29. Are we headed for more lockdowns this Christmas? Andy in Derby. What say you, Andy? Good morning.
I'm supposed to be going on holiday with the family on Boxing Day to Mexico. It's the third time looking for us. We were supposed to go into Australia on the 16th of December.
Oh, God.
But that got cancelled.
But currently you're okay for that trip, aren't you, if I've got my facts right? Mexico's okay?
Yeah, we are, because we were supposed to go on a Caribbean cruise also, and Australia got cancelled. But I got COVID middle of October, and I might still show positive on a PCR test up to 90 days. But Mexico, they don't want a PCR. Just go there, because we've all been fully vaccinated, even the family.
So you're clinging to the hope you get out on Boxing Day, is what you're saying?
Yeah, with a lot more other people, yeah. Hopefully it's going to happen, but I just don't know. If it goes into lockdown, then knackered, isn't it?
How long are you going away for?
2 weeks.
All right. I hope you get there, I really do. People do need a break if they're fortunate enough to be able to get there. Andy, good luck. Thank you for telling us your story. This conversation will continue, also coming up after the news. Arrest for Piers Corbyn at an anti-vax rally.
They're gonna hammer to death those scum.
In 300 yards, turn right onto Shaftesbury Avenue.
With introducing new fascism.
Look, you can have that view, but what I find absolutely abhorrent, and I'm not saying Mr. Corbyn has done this, but other anti-vaccination campaigners book out all the appointments of vaccination and then don't turn up. I say again, I'm not saying Mr. Corbyn has done that.
Take the next right onto Shaftesbury Avenue, then turn left onto Roslin Avenue.
I'm meteorologist Claire Nazir, and I'll be joining Nick to bring you up to date with the latest forecast as we head towards Christmas Day.
That's right, after this at 7:30, you'll listen to Breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari, on LBC. The news is with Simon Conway.
Labour says Boris Johnson must tell the truth after another photo emerged showing a gathering in Downing Street during COVID.